Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening if you're watching this later. I have a topic that is new, and I want to share some things that I'm learning that am using in my coaching practice, and that I will be taking a group through shortly. You'll hear some more about that in the coming weeks. I am doing a group coaching program on this in the very near future, probably late April, no, probably May. It'll probably kick off in the May timeframe. So if stress is a constant hum, all right, I want to start with this. But this if this is calm and grounded and just really peaceful and chill and kind of being able to kind of ebb and flow with life, and this is some significant stressor in your life. For example, I was at Molson Coors when there was the shooting, the mass shooting, in 2020, right before, like 2 weeks before the world shut down. And then 5 days later, my husband's um, workplace was threatened. I was up here for weeks. I think that most of us, so this is a significant stressor. And this could even be getting cut off in traffic, like you're up there, your body is in fight, flight, or freeze. Like, it's there. My hypothesis is that most of us are operating somewhere in here. And a friend of mine even said, I just feel like there's this constant hum of stress, that it's just always there. And what I think is happening is that too many of us think that this is stress up here. And I'm sorry if you're just listening to this, but my arm is way up high. And that the calm and grounded, we don't even know what that feels like anymore. And that we feel like we can only get there on vacation, that we have to get away, we have to escape, we have to either that or we're numbing ourselves, which is still, that constant stress is still there. We're just stuffing it down. Okay. So if we're constantly in this mid place of this constant hum of stress, what we don't realize, what most of us don't realize, is it is like, I'll akin it to leaving your bicycle out in the rain over and over and over again. Because if you leave your bicycle out in the rain, and especially, if you leave it out all winter here in, where we have snow and, all the crazy weather that we get here. Eventually, if you're not wiping it off every time it rains and making sure you're oiling it every time, then it is going to rust. And it's a new term I've heard recently called rusting out. We've heard burnout before. And what rust out is that you're experiencing burnout over and over and over and over. Or what I believe also can cause this rust out, and if you think about it, it's a wearing away, is this constant hum of stress, this constant stress in our lives, that we are not completing any of those stress cycles. And so that stress continues to remain and remain and remain. And so there's a difference between the stressor, whatever it is, that circumstance, the mass shooting, people cut us off in traffic, I get in a fight with my kids, I get in a fight with my spouse, somebody aggravates me because they're not finishing a project on time, whatever it might be, a stressor is different than the actual stress that we feel. And there's something in between. I want to share with you a model that I use in my coaching, in that stressor is, and I'll use my example, the mass shooting that I was in on the campus. I wasn't in the same building, but I was on the campus. I know there were people in the same building, and it incredibly stressful. And it was even just very stressful with police coming at us with guns and come out with your hands up, and they swept the building, and it was 5.5 hours of very stressful time. And then 5 days later, my husband's workplace was threatened. And I felt so I was just high alert. I was hyper vigilant for days. And even with all the training I've had, that stayed there for a long time. And I actually um, worked with a coach. I worked with a therapist. I worked with several people to start to bring that down so that I wasn't. I mean, for the first couple nights, I couldn't sleep. And when we experience these stressors, whether there's something significant like that, or getting cut off in traffic, or getting in a fight, that's a circumstance. That's something, the circumstance is the fact of things that happen. How we feel is the stress. And in between, there are other people who were at that shooting. Number one, whose husband's workplace wasn't threatened days later, who didn't have the same level of stress from that event. And it is our thought about it that creates the stress. It is our thought about it that creates the feelings that we have. Because if we think, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I was not close, I was not in the building, I'm so glad my husband is safe, the police took care of the situation. People might feel more calm, might feel less stress from it. If your thought is, my thought was, someone's going to break into our house. And so I was hyper vigilant. Every noise, I mean, I've gotten used to so many noises around, and even not noise, but we have weird noises. Our deck creaks, animals outside. We live on almost 9 acres, so there's a lot of nature around and wind and whatever. Every noise was just setting me off. Where before, the week before, those noises didn't mean anything. I slept right through them. And so a couple things I want to share with you. One is to start to look at, what am I thinking about the situation? What are my thoughts about the situation? Because our thoughts create our feelings, and then our feelings create our actions. And what we do or don't do is a result of how we feel. And those stressors can influence how we lead, how we are executing, how productive we are. All of those stressors, how we think about those, are going to influence how productive we are going to influence how well we are executing, how well we are leading, because of how we're thinking about it, how we think about that stressor, and then how we feel. Whether that stress increases, remains the same in this mid kind of way, or whether it's lowering. Now, I did say I was going to read some obituaries, because the other piece of what I want to share with you today, so there's kind of two sides of what I want to share with you today. One is how you can look at these stressors differently to help manage the stress. That's one piece. And then what our thought is about them can influence how we feel. So that's one piece. I want you to be starting to observe how you're thinking about whatever the stressor is, whatever the circumstance is. And the circumstance is always fact. It's not your opinion. It's not they're being an asshole, or they're being a jerk, or they're being a pain in the butt, whatever. That's a thought about it. The fact is, my son is screaming for 5 minutes. Or the fact is, somebody cut me off in traffic. Or the thought, or the circumstance, I'm sorry, these are all circumstances. The fact is, somebody shot 4 people in themselves in this, in this mass shooting. Um, Somebody at my husband's workplace threatened to come back with a gun. How we think about it will drive how we feel about it. And so I want you to start to observe that. The other piece of what I want to share is this stress, this constant hum of stress, and I'll get to completing the stress cycle then after this. This stress is wearing away our immune system. It is just like the bicycle that is left out in the rain and never cleaned off and never oiled and starts to rust. We can see the rust on our bicycle. We can't always see the rust, the reactive oxygen species, the all of the things that are going on inside, but we may feel things. We're tired. We're tired more often than not. We have headaches, migraines. We have digestive issues, insomnia, all of these psoriasis, colitis, chronic asthma, IBS, all of these different things that are happening to our body. So many of them are because of the behaviors that we are doing, maybe not consciously, most likely not consciously. They're patterns of behavior that over time, the stress that those induced in our body, the inability for us to manage the stress or to feel the things that we needed to feel by stuffing down all those feelings, it's essentially eating away at our immune system. And I wanted to share with you, Dr. Gabor Mate in one of his videos talks about how, we can be very curious about things like, he said that people with chronic illness, it's not random. It is, sometimes we can explain it with smoking or drinking or things like that, or the genes we have. But who gets sick and who doesn't is not accidental. That was one of the things he said. And I thought that was very curious. And he said it is certain identifiable patterns that are what cause people to get sick. And he read a few obituaries and he said, I want you to listen to this and see if you see any of the patterns in yourself, because what people are lauded for in these obituaries are what got them sick. And not on purpose, but he said, he talked about how what we value, sometimes what we think we value in other people is what got them sick. So a Toronto doctor died, and the quote was, never did he think of giving up his work at this children's hospital. He only stopped a few days before he died. And when we are so compulsive and so rigid in our duty, in our responsibility, in our, and we do all of that in the detriment and to the extent where we are denying our own needs, then we are at major risk for illness. Another quote was a woman who was 55. In her entire life, she never got into a fight with anyone. The worst she could say was phooey or something else along those lines. She had no ego. She just blended in with the environment in an unassuming manner. Now, when we repress anger, that is also suppressing our immune system. And we can either repress our anger, we can act it out, which means, dumping all of our anger on somebody like they're a garbage can with a hairy lid, and rage at other people, which makes us at risk for a heart attack or stroke, or we can process anger healthily. And I'll talk about that in another live. But all of these things, these stressors are just eating away at our immune system. And I will give you a personal example. I have a family member, and she was diagnosed 2.5 years ago with stage 4 breast cancer. It was in 10 different places in her body when they found it, and found out that she was BRCA2. Did a test, and there were one, two, three, four, five, six, at least six other people in our family, between sisters, brothers, nieces, nephews, maybe seven, who also have that BRCA2. No one else has signs of cancer. And yet at age 63, my sister is at stage 4. Well, at 62, she was actually diagnosed at 61, I think. So at age 61, she's diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. She went through a very difficult marriage for a very long time, living with someone who was alcoholic. She went through a pretty tough divorce. She had a lot of stress, along with, as she shared, a lot of shame and guilt and things around, you know, that relationship. And I know other people who are in the same situation. So all of that stress repressed her immune system enough that those cancer cells just really took off and ravaged her body. And we can change this. We can change this constant hum of stress to bring it down so that we're not eating away at our immune system. And one of the things, so there's two things I want you to think about. One is this, or a few things actually. This kind of really thinking about what you're thinking when things happen. What are you thinking about it? What are you making it mean? And then how do you feel? Because stress is a big umbrella, and stress can be frustration, it can be anger, it can be, anxiety and depression, and there's all sorts of things that kind of fall under this umbrella of stress. Stress isn't something that happens on the outside. A stressor occurs, and then we experience a feeling of stress. And it's because of the thought that we're having. And that thought is often so default, so programmed from childhood, so programmed from young adulthood that we don't even realize what we're thinking. So getting in touch with what you're thinking when a stressor occurs. The other thing that you can do that's a very immediate to really help bring that stress from that kind of constant hum down, is to complete the stress cycle. When a stressor occurs, let's say you're driving home from work and somebody cuts you off in traffic. What I do is I will shake, I keep one hand on the wheel and I shake, or at a stoplight, I'll shake. Shaking your body can be a great way to complete the stress cycle, because when the stressor happens, our body floods with cortisol. Our our frontal cortex goes offline. We are in fight, flight, or freeze. And all of these things happen, and our body thinks we're going to die. It doesn't know the difference between a lion running at us and a fight that we're having, even if that fight is in our mind. If we're going through over and over and over how we're going to have an argument with someone, it's the same thing. That's the same stress as having the argument. And so how can you physically, because moving that energy through your body, doing jumping jacks, maybe when you get home from work, before you go in the house, do a few jumping jacks, scream and shake, clench, maybe even in the car, you can just clench all of your muscles really tight and then let them go, because that's going to help your body realize that, okay, it's done, it's over. Those are some tools, and I'll share more as we go through this, in future weeks, ways that you can complete the stress cycle. So I know this was a little bit, a few different things. I wanted to talk about all of these things that we do, these patterns of behavior of just really compulsively working so hard, doing these roles, um, that we're not tending to our own well-being. And tending to your own well-being is not, a Saturday just on Saturday. It's every day. It's getting active rest every evening instead of working every evening. It is getting active rest rather than scrolling social media or binging Netflix. Active rest and completing those stress cycles so that you can help your immune system come back into um, homeostasis. So I hope this was helpful, and I will do more of these and talk more about this because this is, as I said, this is near and dear to my heart. I really am trying to help more people avoid a diagnosis, whether it's cancer or multiple sclerosis or Parkinson's or any chronic illness. Dr. Gabor Mate says that he sees it over and over and over. And he had a palliative care unit. And he said he just saw it over and over and over, those same patterns of behavior that we learned that we thought we were doing to take care of others, but it was at the expense of taking care of ourselves. So I'm encouraging you, take care of yourself every moment of every day. When a stressor occurs, how can you complete that stress cycle? Through clenching or through shaking, or doing jumping jacks, some sort of physical activity, dance, somehow get that cortisol and get that energy moved through your body to bring you back to that calm, grounded homeostasis. Thanks for listening. And if you listen to the replay, click replay in the comments and then just let me know if you have any questions. I do have a freebie. I will put a link in the comments to 3 strategies to work less. And that will help to bring a little bit more balance, bring a little bit more harmony, bring a little more full integration of work and life so that you can bring that stress level down. Thanks. Have a great rest of your week.